what's up? It's Nicola from Singer's Secret. Today, I'm going to go through some of the gear that you might need when you're first starting out as a singer. And this is for if you want to start doing cafe gigs, restaurant gigs, corporate gigs, especially if you're going to be playing in places that don't have the full PA sort of set up already for you. There is a certain amount of equipment that you will need to kind of get started. But music equipment can be expensive, so I'm going to take you through what I've used personally, some of my recommendations, and I'll tell you some things that you probably haven't thought about that you need, but you definitely do need. I get asked this question a lot actually, so what I've done is, I'll put links to everything that I mention today in the video down below, but I've also created like a resource page over on Singer's Secret, which I'll link to down below, and I've kind of listed all my favourite microphones, all my favourite resources for pretty much everything that singers need on that page, so you can go and check that out as well if you aren't sure about what kind of PA you need to buy or whatever it might be. So, first thing that you will need to get if you want to start getting gigs is a microphone. This is going to be quite an important investment for you, and I recommend buying the best that you can afford when it comes to microphones. The reason is because you will use a microphone a lot, and it's kind of like, you know, if you're a really amazing piano player, but then you buy a shitty, crappy sounding piano, you're never going to sound as good as you could if you were playing on a decent instrument. It's the same thing with your microphone. You want to find a microphone that's going to do your voice justice. So in terms of microphones, you have condenser microphones and dynamic microphones, and just to sort of really simplify the difference, dynamic microphones are usually for the stage, condenser microphones are usually for recording, but there are exceptions to the rule, which I'm going to tell you right now. So the industry standard dynamic microphone for many, many years has been the Shure 58, Shure SM58, which is this bad boy here. This is like a 40-year-old microphone. It was actually created in like 1966, I think it was, like in the 60s. But it's such a sort of sturdy, decent sounding kind of mic that it's really stood the test of time. However, like if you go to recording studios, not recording studios, rehearsal studios, generally the microphones that they provide will be Shure 58s. But, or if you go and do like a bar gig or a pub gig, they'll probably have one of these if they have their own PA system set up. But you want, the other reason why you want your own microphone, by the way, is because a lot of singers tend to put their mouths on their microphones. I know I do. And it's like a personal hygiene thing. Like, have you ever used a microphone that just stinks because people have been slagging? They're putting their saliva onto it, and you've got like 50 million people slagging onto it, and then the venues don't clean them, so it's like really disgusting, like all that bacteria that you're putting like right in your mouth. So that's another reason why you want your own personal microphone. But I digress. So this is a 40-year-old microphone. They've actually come up with a beta version of this microphone. So if you are going to get like a standard dynamic microphone that's quite hardy, that you can use at a variety of locations, then go for the beta version of the Shure 58. It sounds so much better than the original. I, however, use this one. This is a condenser microphone, so one that you know, like I said, condenser microphones, you usually find them in recording situations. They're a lot more sensitive, but the reason I use this, and this is a stage condenser microphone, this is a Shure Beta 87A, and this is a lot more expensive than this. It's like almost triple the price. This microphone was like literally made for my voice. I went down to the music shop and I tried out a whole heap of different microphones. This one really picks up the mid-tones to my voice. I have quite a warm voice, and it doesn't have any kind of cut-through edge to it. So yeah, this picks up the mid-tones really, really well, which kind of brightens my voice up a lot. It just sounds so much nicer when I use this, so much clearer than if I use this. Like the the difference is quite astounding. And that's really why you want to buy the best microphone that you can afford, is because they make such a difference to how you sound as a singer. The next thing that you're going to need, and this one can be optional, but I recommend you get it, is a microphone stand. You can get them for quite cheap. One little trick, I've got a good microphone stand and I've got a crap one. This is my crap one. This one was super cheap, but it does the trick. Now, if you're on the gig, quite often what happens, especially if you play an instrument and sing, so if you've got this part of the microphone extended right out and then you've got your microphone in here, what can often happen is that this joint here and the microphone starts kind of dropping, and you'll be singing and then suddenly it will start dropping and you're trying to play and sing like this. It's like really, really annoying. A little trick that you can do, there's two things you can do to stop that, is number one, oil this. Obviously you want to try and get a microphone that doesn't do that because it's such a pain in the ass. But if you oil this joint, I just use like cooking oil and spray it, or get like a brush and brush it, and then kind of move this knob a couple of times to really get the oil in there. It actually fixes that problem and you can tie it really tight again. The other thing you can do is I use some like duct tape or gaffer tape, and I just tape from there down to here. So I tape on this bit first and then I pull it and then secure it down here. If it's really giving trouble, or I know I'm going to be outdoors and I've got a set to get through and I don't want my microphone stand to drop. The other reason that you want a microphone stand is because it looks professional. It gives you somewhere to put your microphone when you're not using it, like, you know, during the break. But the other reason is it kind of creates this obvious, this is the stage and the musician's area at a cafe, which usually doesn't have a sectioned off area for musicians or a stage or anything. And you want that because if you don't have that kind of barrier that kind of indicates to people this is where the musician's sort of area is, people, they don't think, they kind of, if you're on your break, they'll often wander past your speakers and kick them and, you know, go into the band stage area, and they could potentially damage your instruments. So having that microphone stand is a really good idea, just if for nothing else, just for that. Next, you will need a small PA or an amp. I recommend using a small portable PA unit because it means that you can it comes with some kind of mixer, so you can plug some of the other instruments in, like, you know, if you've got a keyboard there or a guitar or something, you can plug them in and create a nice mix of like the volume and fiddle with the highs and the lows and the mids and stuff to get like a really nice kind of joint sound with your vocal, rather than you just kind of coming out of your amp and they're coming out of their amp and it's kind of not blended nicely. The PA system that I started off with, which I've found to be amazing and I still use it. It's so sturdy. I've been using it for like almost 10 years. Well, since 2008. Is the Yamaha Stage Pass. Stage Pass. It's only got one S. I'll link it below if you want to check it out. It's so lightweight, portable. The mixer could be a bit better, but for the price point, I'm not complaining. And then if I want to, now I kind of play to kind of 500 plus when I'm doing corporate gigs and stuff. And if I have to take my own PA unit in, I actually take my Stage Pass. But what I do is I just add a couple of big ass powered speakers and plug them into the Stage Pass, and then suddenly I've got enough volume for 500 people. And then if I'm just doing a cafe, I just take the Stage Pass without the extra speakers and it's big enough. So it's really versatile from that point of view. I like the sound of them. A lot of people, they love like the Roland Street Cube. I've got one. I can't stand the bloody thing. It sounds like shit. Like, it's not that powerful. I mean, yeah, it's like super easy because you can use it like for a busking amp, and it's got batteries and you can plug it in and all that kind of stuff. But the sound quality of it really sucks. And it's kind of like the microphone. The sound of the PA will alter how good you sound to everyone else. And it's kind of like, you know, if you're playing on an instrument and you don't like the sound of it, it's just really going to grate you. So spend some time, investing in the best PA that you can for the size that you need, and go down to the music shop and try out a whole bunch and see which one you like the sound of. That would be my recommendation. Otherwise, yeah, Yamaha Stage Pass is awesome. I'll link it below. So that is the bulk of the equipment that you need. But now we're into the couple of extra things that you will need that you probably didn't realize that you need. I feel like I'm speaking really fast today. I don't know why. Anyway, public liability insurance, my friends. You will need it because stuff does happen and you do not want to be sued or liable for whatever. Depending on where you live, like in Australia, you can get public liability insurance super cheap because there's this thing called Duck for Cover. I'll link it below. And it's Australia-wide, and I think they buy it in bulk specifically for musicians. So I think it's kind of like a 1-year subscription, and it costs you 80 Australian dollars for the year, and it covers you up for a couple of million of public liability insurance, which is awesome. I think it runs from like August to August. So like if you joined in September, you'd still have to just pay the 80 for the year, because that's kind of how they buy it in bulk or something like that. So it's super cheap, but it's really good peace of mind. If you're in other countries, I'm not sure if they've got the same kind of cool deal in like the States or the UK or whatever, but just Google it, public liability insurance for musicians, or go and ask like your Performing Rights Association or something, and they should give you some recommendations. And while we're talking about insurance, the other thing that you will need is to get your equipment insured. I mean, if you're going to spend, I can't remember how much this was, it was like $450 or something for a microphone, plus your PA unit, which is like $800, and then you've got your microphone stand. It adds up. Stuff happens. I'll give you a perfect example. My bass player, one of my bass players, Joe, we had a corporate gig in the city, and he lives in Joondalup, which is like, this is back in Perth, which is like an hour or something down the freeway from the city, and we had to get to the gig at peak hour, so the freeway kind of like clogs up with cars. Hello. So he was driving to the gig, and he had his double bass in the back. He didn't need an amp or anything because we were doing like a really big corporate gig and they were providing that. But you know, he had this big double bass, which is like, I think his was like $5,000 or something, because it was a decent-ish double bass. Some loser slams into the back of him in peak hour traffic, and he's got his double bass in the back, which is a fragile, very large wooden instrument. It destroyed the whole bass, like it cracked it, completely munted the bridge, and he didn't have it insured. He did not have insurance. So basically, not only could he not do the gig, but he was fucked, for, excuse my language, but you know, he was screwed, because that's his livelihood. He no longer had his double bass. Fortunately, he plays electric bass and he could do a couple of electric bass gigs. But you know, in jazz, typically you use a double bass, and he could no longer do those gigs. And you know, unless he had like a spare $5,000 lying around to buy another bass. Ouch. Another thing was, similar thing actually happened to a friend of mine, a guitar player. He got rear-ended, had his PA and guitars in the back. But what happened to him is that the accident really hurt him, like he got really badly hurt, and he couldn't play. Fortunately for him, not only did he have his equipment insured, but he also had income insurance, which basically saved him, because you know, if you can't use your body and you make your full-time living as a musician, and then suddenly something like that happens to you and you can't work, he would have been totally screwed if he didn't have income insurance. So it might seem like, I've got to get my gear insured, but stuff happens. Like some idiot will come along and spill a drink on your PA unit because you're out in a social environment. Or like this one time we were doing a gig, and we'd left all our stuff on the stage, and then we went at half time to have a break, and then I just happened to go back to get something from my bag, and I saw these two drunk girls on the stage teetering around the instruments in high heels, looking at some photos that were behind the stage with drinks in their hands, and like they were like their feet were like this far away from the double bass player's bridge of his instrument, and I'm just like, that is just a whole lot of pain waiting to happen. And you know, so stuff like that happens all the time when you're out on gigs. So yes, end of rant, just get your stuff insured. Okay, last thing that you definitely need, especially as singers, is you need chart books and some kind of transposition software. It is the singer's job to provide charts, so music, sheet music. In terms of jazz, this is usually something that looks like this. So I've got basically just chords with the vocal melody written out. And the reason you need to provide charts, even if you're playing covers, is because you need to have all of your music in your vocal keys. Musicians, especially in the jazz blues realm, will end up working for like 3 or 4 or 5 bands. They're just kind of guns for hire. And so when you want them to sing your stuff in your key, you need to be able to provide chart books. So I love these folders. You know, I could not get these in the UK. It was like ridiculous. These are the best because they keep all the charts like really organised, and you kind of just put them in the little plastic sleeves. But could I find these anywhere in the UK? No. I had to actually get these sent from Australia. Crazy. But these are the best for, you know, and you just have them for each band member. Like this is my trumpet one, and then I'll have one for keys, one for bass, one for drums. And you just shove all your charts in there, and then you just carry that to the gig. Now, the thing about charts is that not all instruments are tuned to concert. They are different keys. So, you know, like a tenor sax is a B flat tuned instrument. So you need to have charts in their key. Instead of having to write the entire chart out every single freaking time, using software programs like Sibelius, which is awesome, and it's not that expensive. I think you can get it like the cheap version for like $150 or something like that if you search around on the internet. And then you've got more expensive versions which go up to like $300 or something, but you can get the basic version for a decent price. Once you've kind of created the chart in there once, instead of having to write it all out again, you just hit transpose and it's done, and then you just print it out. It's wicked. Especially if, you know, you're trying to do different arrangements, or you've kind of written some chords in there wrong, you can just like quickly change them or whatever. And this is kind of where you do need to know music. You need to learn how to read and write music and create your charts yourself. It's all part of being like a well-rounded musician. But you get really fast at creating charts once you've done them a few times in Sibelius, and so like you can just churn them out after a while. It's also kind of got a feature where you can scan. I haven't used it myself because I haven't needed to, but you can scan music in and then it kind of brings it up. I've been told that it's quite decent when it kind of creates the version. I think you have to fix up a few things, but it can do that. You can scan music in and then transpose once you've scanned it in. If you are completely novice when it comes to knowing how to read music, which you shouldn't be, you should learn this stuff, but if you are, you can do things like, there's apps like that, E-Chords I think it's called, which is like a guitar app, where it's literally just got like the lyrics with the chords across the tops, and you can just transpose it once you've downloaded the app and then print that out. So you could do it that way. But yeah, it doesn't take much to learn how to start creating your own charts. So yes, that is pretty much all that you need to sort of start getting out there and getting gigs. When you're first starting out, you don't have to spend a whole heap of money because you don't have to buy a whole lot of stuff, but you know, try and buy the best quality that you can so it lasts you and makes you sound good too. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget that I will put a link to everything down below, as well as that resources page over on Singer's Secret if you want to check it out. Don't forget to grab your free vocal warm-ups over on singerssecret.com. Subscribe, give me a like, and I think I always do this, like every week I'm like, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.